All right, I officially have the worst habit in the world of rearranging garden beds. Did anyone else do this when they were a kid, where you like rearrange the furniture in your room like every single week? I feel like I just grew up and started doing that with my plants instead. So I came out here this morning and I was like, these 3 new cedar beds really should be a tea garden. So we're gonna do it. I went to the farm, I picked up a bunch of plants. We're gonna plant a tea garden today. I have always loved tea, and I think it kind of became a much bigger part of my life when my chronic illness started flaring up really bad. Partly just because it's a comforting ritual, but also because there's just so many healing benefits to tea, and I found that I really couldn't drink coffee at all anymore. And I don't know if that's my autoimmune stuff or what exactly was causing it, but I really can't have more than like 1 cup of coffee a week. And most of you would probably call it coffee milk, not coffee. I dilute it so much because otherwise I just get massive like heart palpitations and anxiety. So it's just not worth it. But I still want a fancy drink. So I don't know why I haven't prioritized this in my garden sooner. And these beds from Epic, I feel like, are just screaming to be filled with tea plants. I grabbed a bunch of really beautiful stuff from the store and some seeds that we can get planting. So let's talk about what we're gonna be planting in these today. Of course, the star of the show is our hibiscus plant. I always get a hibiscus plant every single year. And every year I tell myself I'm gonna dig it up and bring it indoors and overwinter it. And every year I never actually do that, which is really a shame because they're beautiful and they're expensive, especially to get a larger size. This is only a 6-inch pot and I think it was like $25. So now I have no excuse because I have the greenhouse. So I really plan to bring this indoors over the winter this time. But hibiscus makes wonderful tea. The flowers only bloom for like 1 day. So like this one's already ready to pick and you can dry it. And what's really cool about hibiscus is if you add lemon juice to it, it's one of those teas that actually changes color, goes from like blue to purple. So it's kind of like a little magic plant. This one will get really big. Actually, I've got a number in here that will get really big. So they're gonna kind of end up being like the centerpiece of each bed, and then we'll work around them. I grabbed some calendula seed. Calendula is one of those things that I try to just sprinkle in everywhere, but it has so many health benefits. So if you're into herbalism, I would say this is a really fun one to start with because it's very beginner friendly and there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. And because I plant so much of it, I do tend to just get like a bulk pack of seeds. I don't really care if the germination rate is that great. I'm not so much concerned about the quality because I'm planting so much of it. I also grabbed an English lavender. I have lavender all over the yard, but it's mostly Munstead lavender. And that does really well here, but I just love the shape of the English lavender leaves. And it just smells amazing. This one will be a big one for my garden to glass mocktails this summer. I grabbed a lemon verbena. This one's also highly medicinal. I've never grown it before, so I'm really excited to finally have some in the garden. We always have lemon balm just scattered around, but anytime I can get more lemony flavors into the mix, I'm happy. I grabbed a stevia plant for some sweetness. I actually have not liked stevia in the past. I feel like it's a very overpoweringly sweet, but I wanted to have something that we could use as a natural sweetener so that as we're making our teas, we can really make every single thing from these 3 beds. This is like the saddest plant, but I just pulled it out from another bed, and these are chives that just kind of were buried way too deep, so that's why they're all white and sad looking, but they'll bounce right back. Chives are so resilient. So we're adding a little bit of a savory element here because a lot of herbs are medicinal and make great contributions to tea as well. So it's kind of like an herb/tea garden, which is why I also have this oregano here. Oregano can be a little bit hard to keep contained if you add it to a raised bed. Some people only grow it in containers, but I just find if I pick it really aggressively, it's not an issue. I got rosemary. Rosemary and tea is actually one of my favorite things. Rosemary is another one of those up there with calendula. If you're doing beginner herbalism, that I highly recommend. And I grabbed this pineapple sage. I've only ever grown like the kind of standard kind of common sage with the purple flowers. This has red flowers. I'm really excited for this one. It's gonna get very big. I'm gonna throw some parsley and some basil in here as well, just because I like to have it all throughout all of my beds. For the last few seeds, I'm doing this really beautiful purple emperor nasturtium. This one's been a little bit tricky to find. It keeps coming in and out of stock. I will try to link it for you down below because it's just so unique and beautiful. I grow all sorts of types of nasturtiums in the garden. It's actually really great if you feel like there's a cold coming on. You can infuse this and it makes this beautiful peppery floral tea that's just got this amazing color. And I didn't realize this, but amaranth is all totally edible, of course, and it also can be made into tea. So we're going to experiment with this one as well. This is the Love Lies Bleeding variety, and I'll link this down below too. Of course, chamomile is a classic to have in a tea garden. I normally have chamomile growing all over the place, but it's still kind of early in the season and I haven't seen any pop up that I can transplant. And I don't have any seeds for it because I usually just have it everywhere. So we're going to experiment because Amy actually has been able to grow chamomile from chamomile teas. This is just chamomile tea from the store, loose leaf basically, and I'm going to just throw it in all these beds and see if something pops up. I have no idea if there's any viable seeds in here. It's just a fun experiment. I think I've been a little bit hesitant to allow myself to do a tea garden before because when you're growing a vegetable garden, I think there's this common mindset that you want every square inch to be productive and useful. And the idea of a tea garden kind of makes me feel like I'm not going to get these huge harvest basket size yields out of the plants. It's a very different use case, but there's going to be so many other benefits to having a tea garden directly in the center of everything else that's going on in my garden space. It's going to act as like a beacon for pollinators. They're going to love these plants, and a lot of them are very aromatic, and they're going to help me with pest control too. So I'm creating this island of really beneficial plants where even if I'm not getting enormous yields off of them, I'm still going to be getting enormous benefits just by having them in existence in the space, central to everything else that I'm growing. Plus, these beds are just too pretty and they need to be celebrated with the most beautiful plants that I can find. I think what really put me over the edge though was I was thinking about how we've got this beautiful ledge that you can rest your drinks on, and how amazing would it be to grow the plants in the bed that you're using to make those garden to glass drinks. It's just a full circle thing and I need to make it happen. I am notoriously a control freak, type A, stereotypical eldest daughter, and I have a really hard time planting things without using some kind of strategy. But I've been really challenging myself this year because I want to try to just let the garden kind of tell me what it wants to do. And what I'm noticing is that in doing that, I'm a lot more excited to be out here. I mean, gardening is always just one of my favorite things to do, no matter what, but it's giving me a whole new level of appreciation for just like letting the plants tell me what they want and working with what I've got to make sure that I'm like celebrating the space as much as possible. It's easier now, of course, that I have a lot of experience growing things and I kind of am already familiar with the growth pattern of a lot of different plants. So I can say like, all right, this one's huge, so it's gonna go in the center and then we're gonna build off around that. This oregano can trail down the sides, so we're gonna pop it in the corner and we'll train it so that it goes off of that side and trails. I just kind of squealed internally because I realized I have these pink snapdragons in here already and I'm adding this pink hibiscus and I'm unintentionally creating a Barbie dream garden, which I'm here for. There are some lettuces in this bed, but I'm going to be harvesting them in the next couple of weeks, so I'm not really worried about them being in the way, and they'll add some kind of color while everything else is filling in, which is another great reason to succession plant. We've got our hibiscus out. The root ball looks good. Not root bound at all. I just loosened it up a tiny bit and I'll wiggle that in. This one, it could easily take over this bed. So we're gonna stick to the outskirts for the rest of this bed and fill it in with kind of seeds and trailing things. I had already put marigolds in this bed, which will also be great for tea, and there's some parsley in here as well. I just kind of need to shift things around because I want our pineapple sage to have the center space since it's going to be by far the largest. This is a nice loose root ball. Everything's been well watered. The pineapple sage has these beautiful red flowers. So I'm almost doing red and orange, and then we've got pink. It looks so pretty. The chives I'm gonna stick in this bed too because I feel like this back bed is leaning more towards the savory herbs elements that we have available to us, which means I might as well stick our rosemary in here too. Rosemary can grow to kind of a moderate size, so we want to make sure it's got plenty of room. So I'll stick it over in this corner. See how quickly I gave up on using a trowel? I just get overexcited. I can't wait for the trowel to do the job that my hands could do in half a second. It's also just a lot more comfortable for me a lot of the times with my arthritis to just use my hands. I'm thinking about color, and I'm also thinking about size and usage. So with this one, I'm mostly thinking about the color. With the English lavender, it's gonna be this beautiful purple, which will go so nicely with the pink and really draw your eye to the center bed. So I'm gonna stick this in the corner because this lettuce, remember, will be coming out shortly, and then this will give it plenty of room from the hibiscus. Just gonna stick this stevia in this front right corner. I'm hoping that one will kind of bush out and cover this front edge and give us a little bit more greenery up front. As I'm walking through here, I'm noticing that I'm very thankful for the spacing that I did between these beds. It's about 2 feet. I feel like that's the minimum for me, but it gives me the ability to reach both beds easily. Obviously, if I were to need a wheelbarrow coming in and out of here, I would want it to be a little bit wider, but just for a walking path, it feels cozy without being too tight. Now I just have seeds and the basil and parsley, and there's already parsley in that bed, so I'm probably just gonna stick a couple in this back bed. This one is a little bit root bound. Parsley tends to be one of those ones where if you get it from the store, there's multiple seedlings in each cell, which can be a pro and a con. It depends on how developed the plants have had a chance to get, because if they get too big and they're crowded, it can end up stunting their growth. I always get excited, but then I have to check myself whenever I see that there's like lots of plants in one cell, because sometimes less really is more. I will say with the basil, usually there's 3 or 4 in each cell, and it's a little bit root bound and you got to loosen it up like this, but they always bounce back. And I think that's because it's so easy to propagate basil just from a stem, right? So even if it has like barely any roots left, I hardly ever worry about it getting stunted because it's just the same as if I had propagated it. I'm gonna start with this chamomile, and like I said, I'm probably gonna regret this, but I'm just lightly sprinkling it everywhere because I'm anticipating that not very much of it is gonna come up. And chamomile self-sows really easily. So if you know a plant self-sows very easily, you generally also know that it doesn't have to be really buried deep in the soil. I kind of just like scratch it in a bit. The same goes for calendula. It's a wildflower, so we know that wildflowers are self-sowing, and they can generally just be surface sown directly on top of the soil. And we'll do like a whatever comes up, and we'll thin it out if we have to situation here. So pretty. So that will be like yellows and oranges. Then we've got like a deep red orange, and this will be red. That will be so nice. Calendula has probably the freakiest looking seeds that you'll ever see. They look like little worms. They really freaked me out the first time I saw them. Okay, with our nasturtium and amaranth, we need to be a little bit more intentional because the amaranth is gonna get huge and the nasturtium is gonna wanna trail. And I feel like we just have to put the nasturtium in this center bed because we've got those pinks and purples going on. This likes to be about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. And it's generally one that self-sows though, so I think it's pretty forgiving. We'll do a couple there. Oh, I'm just so excited about this. I might put just a few extra in the middle just to be on the safe side. Really, really can't wait to see this all filled in. Our amaranth is a barely cover as well. And I think since this one can get really just like so huge, I'll do it along the back side. Oh my gosh, those seeds are tiny. Oh, I just planted way too many of those. Clean up my mess. Get dirt on everything. What are you in? It's a hot one today. I don't love to transplant things in this bright sunlight, but sometimes we just don't have a choice. So the only other plant that I really wanted to add in here that I'm missing is borage. So I may add that at some other point, but I'm sure I'm missing other plants that would make excellent plants for a tea garden. So let me know if you think of any. There's still plenty of time for me to add stuff if you come up with a good idea. I think these beds are just perfect for this. They're deep enough that I could have done pretty much anything I wanted in them, but I'm just so excited to celebrate the beauty of the greenhouse and the beauty of these beds all together and create some amazing teas together this summer. Thanks so much for gardening with me, and happy growing.